Welcome back, everyone, to Economic Preppers, where Dylan and Patrick and I sometimes entertain an interesting guest, and that's what this episode is all about today. We have a very special guest, Joe Brown of Heresy Financial. Joe, welcome aboard.
Thank you so much for having me today.
Yes, and a little intro about Joe here. And Joe is we've been following him for years. Patrick and I are big fans. I think Dylan is too. This is Joe over at Heresy Financial. This is his YouTube. This is also him on Twitter at Joe Brown. And Joe came up with a really interesting video that both Patrick and I watched yesterday about education. Patrick, I know you had a question about this. Why don't you go ahead and lead off the discussion with that question?
Yeah, so just a quick update for those of you guys who don't know a little bit about Joe and his background. Joe, why don't you just give a quick background? Because I know I've shared your video quite a few times, but just so people get a perspective of where you're coming from with your financial background and like what you're doing for our community if they haven't seen it already. But I think most of our viewers have seen you around.
Yeah, so I got my start when my wife and I got married right out of college. We had between us $30,000 worth of debt, and I was making less than minimum wage at the time. And so I knew I was in a hole. So I started reading books like Dave Ramsey's books on like how to get out of debt. And I just fell in love with finance, personal finance, like learning about investing, like what is this thing like called compound interest and what is an ETF or a mutual fund. So I had a buddy who was a stockbroker, and I started talking to him about it. He was like, "Hey, look, if you are really interested in this stuff, he's like, you could probably make a career out of it if you want to. I can tell you, how to answer all the questions through an interview process and get you hired as a broker trainee." So I jumped on that and got into the broker training program and just went super deep into it, loved it, learned everything I could until I realized that if you just drink the Kool-Aid from inside of the belly of the beast, then you come away with a picture of how the economy works that doesn't line up with reality. Kept on, it was like, some of these things aren't making sense. And so that's when I started researching and learning and reading books and trying to discover, hey, how does this actually work, from an outside perspective. And I, found, like people like Peter Schiff and Ray Dalio, and got introduced to like Austrian economics and realized, oh my gosh, like everything the way I thought it worked from, inside the machine, it's very different. And got to a point where I decided, I can't really keep on selling what I'm selling in good faith anymore. And started Heresy Financial, quit my job, just kind of with the only goal to teach people how money really works. And so that's where, I started a bunch of different things. My YouTube channel kind of took off first. And so I've been focusing pretty much on that since. And so that's what got me here today.
So I met Joe actually at the Silver Symposium last year for the first time, and it was quite a pleasure. And people think that the reason that I think Joe's awesome is because of his great content or how he like takes economics or how he explains like how money works and what the difference between money and currency is and all these other topics that sound foreign. It wasn't that. It was actually when I saw a video of him and his kids. And so I guess to me, that's what I want to get back to is it's the video that you posted yesterday. It really aligns with how I feel as a father. And I'm looking at you going, I know how much content you're producing. I know how hard the work is of a content creator. Like there's barely any downtime. And you talked about prioritizing your time like every day for your family, not just prioritizing it throughout one day of the week or whatnot. You say you prioritize them all the time. So these are the things that I pick up on that relate to me. And I think a lot of our audience. So what I want to ask you is actually not a question related to economics or finances or any of that. It's as a dad, as a father, like as a husband, how does that work at home? Like with your wife, how does she play a part in raising the kids and taking this content that you've created? Now she gets to support you and encourage you. But when you learn what's really happening as a dad, I don't know how I could possibly send my kids to a public school. It's just not for me. And when you post something like that, it resonates. So what does that look like when Mrs. Brown is saying, man, I listen to you. Here's why we do things this way. I'd love to hear more about that.
Yeah. I mean, I've kind of from the start, my wife and I have kind of always prioritized things for our kids that people around us, sometimes by choice and sometimes, just by circumstance, unfortunate circumstance, have not done. But, like, for instance, we spent the first, 9 months of being married just getting out of debt. Like we were together. We put her entire salary towards getting out of debt, and like our friends looked at us like we were crazy. We lived in a really bad area. Like on our first day moving in, there was this kid riding a tricycle in a parking lot, and he had like skull like face paint on. Like it was like terrifying, like almost like a horror movie. My dad is a retired police officer, and he was in the city that we were living in when he was a cop, and he said, right next door, I went to a call where somebody murdered a hooker in that empty lot right next to your apartment. And so we were in a bad neighborhood, and but we were only paying $600 a month for rent. And we lived on $200 a month for groceries. We paid for literally like all of our money went towards getting out of debt. And our friends around us at the time, they were like, hey, we're going to pay a couple $100 more for a nicer apartment. But then every little thing adds up. It's just going out to eat once. It's just doing this once. And it's like, I'm more of like an all or none, like go all in. If it's worth doing, it's worth overdoing. And so we ended up getting, debt free in 9 months, and then we got pregnant. And so when my son was born, my wife was able to stay home with him. And it was really tough. Like that was like right when I was starting my job as a broker trainee. And we had $2,000 a month to live on. And if we would have had any payments, like any debt, any like, car payments or anything like that, we would have not have been able to do it.
Yeah.
And so she would have had to work, and we would have had to figure out childcare and things like that. But because we were able to, sacrifice in the beginning and got used to that, well, then, as I made, more and more and more money, when I was a broker and got into much better positions in sales and things, it was easy. It was like, now, we can adjust upwards, and we don't have to, think about, hey, should we cut back now to let you stay home or anything. It was already baked into the cake. And then, so my wife has, because she's doing that, it was a lot, she was with the kids. So she's always kind of taking the lead on, on managing the homeschool stuff. And so even from kids being really young, she's, been like slowly teaching them and things, introducing them to numbers and letters and colors and all that when they were really young. And then COVID hit and everybody was homeschooled. My kids were already kind of a little bit ahead at that point. They weren't really at the age to go into school quite yet. And so we were just like, well, of course. And then that was when I started, it was my, Heresy Financial was getting going at that time. And so I was doing a lot more traveling, and it just made sense. And now looking back on it, it's like, man, I am so happy about it, because you look at what's going on in schools today. There's increasing violence, it seems. There's a lot of political stuff going on. There's a lot of sexual stuff going on. There's a lot of gender stuff. There's so much stuff that your kids are exposed to, that I'm so glad that we're in a position where we can keep them home and teach them ourselves. And here's the thing. I know people that are keeping their kids at home homeschooling for political reasons, and their kids are behind, like severely behind, academically speaking. And it's like, maybe that won't hurt them in the long run, but there's a good chance that it could.
Yeah.
And so it's like it's a big responsibility. And I talked about this in the video, that like it's actually a job. Like it's hard to like take a 6-year-old and teach them to read and to write and to do math. Like it takes a lot of work.
Or even to put on their shoes, or like
Right,
even
yeah.
go and close the door, or maybe just throw a piece of garbage. Like a simple task. It's just not possible with a 6, 7, 8, 9, 10-year-old.
Right. And yeah, it's a big responsibility. And so if you're you have to examine like yourself, like what are the reasons why I'm doing this? Is it really because I believe this is the thing that's going to give them the best chance to be, you know, as successful as possible in the future? Or am I doing this because of, you know, something for me? Is because I don't like, you know, school, even though it would be better for them because, you know, socially or whatever? Or am I hurting them because I'm not, you know, willing to put in the work? You know, like it's easier for me to do this. So I think you have to really examine yourself. And then finally, like, this is something that might be, it seems seems controversial, but like, I like my kids. My wife and I really like our kids. And we notice, you know, a lot of people that, you know, we interact with them and see the way that they interact with their kids. And it's like their kids are an inconvenience to them.
Yeah, I
It's
totally
like,
hear you.
like, get out of here. I can't wait till the babysitter comes, or I can't wait till they go to bed, or I can't wait until this. I can't wait until that. I can't wait. It's like, I actually enjoy my kids.
Yeah, I have friends too who are like, yeah, man, it's great because they go to bed at 8 o'clock. And I have a friend of mine, they've got like a bedtime song. They're actually like excited when their kids go to bed. And I was like, Caitlin and I went home, we talked about that. Like, man, are we just weird? Like, we had kids because we wanted to have them. And I actually think my son's a cool little dude. And I love my daughter. And like a little boy, it's awesome. And I got another one on the way. It's like, am I crazy, or is being someone who loves being a dad just awesome? Like, you got this. I got Bitcoin behind me and daddy. Like, that's all I am, guys. Like, I'm a dad first. Like, no matter what I do, you can call me anything you want. But that's what I love is, yes, I love my kids too. Is that crazy?
It's a little crazy. Having raised two of my own, I think it's I mean, you get to the point where like you look back at certain things, you're like, how did I ever do that? Like, you know, you did things when you're in your 20s or early 30s, and you're like, how did I ever get through, do those things, or put in those hours, or get up at 5 a.m. and get the kids off to daycare, and then do work at 8-hour, 9 job and pick them up and come home and then coach soccer and then cut the grass on Saturday and take them to football. I mean, you do all those things and you look back like, man, that was a lot of work. But hopefully at the end of the day, it all pays off. And there are days that it's harder for sure, but there are challenges across the board, Joe. And one of the questions I had, and I loved the education video yesterday, by the way, I thought that was a great take. And I love talking about topics that are like, we can all talk about the debt ceiling. We can talk about economics and the dollar dying. We talk about that every week, but educating our kids, that's probably what it comes down to. Like, the next generation is so important. I mean, we've all read, we know about the book, The Fourth Turning, and it's like every generation matters more and the economics happening more. But how, like, I think you hit the nail on the head when you were saying, like, how do you teach a 6, 7, 8-year-old certain things? Yet they're trying to teach them certain other things at the same age that are controversial. But how do you ingrain, and just like, how do you get to the point where you and your wife got? How do you get the kids throughout their development to understand money, finances, writing a check, signing their name? I mean, they don't even teach cursive anymore, but just limiting it to economics. How do we teach them about fundamentals of financials and marketplace, and even becoming an entrepreneur? They don't teach you that, as you point out in the video. They don't teach. They teach you how to be a cog on the wheel versus reinventing the wheel. So
are they
how do you break out of that?
Dollars or silver coins or Bitcoin? Like, what are they saving in? Joe's Brown's kid, what are they saving their crypto? How do they do that?
Yeah. So I'll tell you the way that we're doing it right now. Not that it's the best way or the only way or what anybody should do, but this is kind of what you know, the way that we're currently doing it and the way we arrived at. So number one, it's I think that there's a high degree of importance on being able to do the basics. And so, like, I talk about, like, you know, just like the standard tests, like, if, you know, compared to, you know, all the kids who are in public schools or private schools, like the tests that they have to take, where are they ranking? Like, there are things that are very important for kids to understand. Like, you've got to understand how to do math. You've got to understand how to read. You've got to understand how to write, because that teaches you how to think, how to learn, how to problem solve. Like, those are very important things to learn. Not because it's like, in most people's day-to-day lives, they're never doing long division. Like, it's not going to happen, but the ability to learn how to do long division is the ability to learn how to think and solve problems. And so it's very important to get that basic stuff out of the way. So that's like, it's just like, you know, it's just, you know, parenting and raising kids. It's like, hey, you've got to like, you're working through your workbooks. Like there's, you know, they have curriculum just like anybody else does. But, you know, you have a lot more flexibility to do things like for individual learning styles. Like, you know, sometimes my kids have like competitions with each other on who can finish first in the day. Sometimes it's, hey, I'm going to do a little bit, and then, you know, we're going to like, you know, split it up, and I get, you know, 1 grape or 2 grapes every time I finish a page or something like that. Like little things and my son and my daughter, they're very different. And so they're, you know, the way that they have, you know, are motivated is very different from each other. So that's important. Number one, getting the basics out of the way. But there's additional things that I think that are vital for, like, when I think into the future about what's going to be necessary to succeed, not today and not like 20 years ago, but in, you know, 20 years from now. There are some things that are very, very important that will always be important. Like, number one, the ability to communicate, which is like, what is communicating? It's number one, it's being able to think clearly through something, and then being able to articulate it, and then have the confidence to you know, deliver that articulation to somebody else. And so you know, developing communication skills, sales. So like we do, like, you know, let the kids do like lemonade stands, and there's little business fairs you can sign up for that are kind of like science fairs, but they're business fairs, and try and do things, you know, go door to door and sell things to neighbors, like little tiny skills like that, you know, sales and communication. And later on, like, you know, I think that having a positive media presence, or understanding how to interact healthily with social media is something that's going to be vital, because it's here to stay, and very few people are going to decide to become Amish. So it's better to learn how to use it in a healthy way than try and just like keep it away from them. And so things like that are, I think, are important, that nobody's learning how to do the right way in schools. And then finally, the things like economics and how money works and taxes, and what, you know, some of the more libertarian principles about, you know, government and stuff. I think a lot of that at this age, like they're like 7 and 5, it comes through osmosis. Like, my wife and I talk about all of this stuff very openly in front of them all the time. I talk about what I do at, like, you know, during my day, like at dinner time, like, you know, these are the things that I, you know, learned or talked about or did today. And you know, you're not directly having them do something or teach them something, but they're there listening. And it's, you know, kids are, you know, very, very much like sponges, and they absorb it. And you know, every once in a while they ask a question. It's like, I didn't know that you understood enough to be able to even ask that question. So like, that's cool. So, I mean, that's kind of the general idea of the way that we're going about it right now. And it's not right for everybody, but it's working for us.
Dude, keep it up. I love it. Like, every time you do it, I'm all over it. It's just crazy to think what's going to happen with our kids.
Absolutely. Dylan, I think you had a great follow-up question to this, right?
I have a couple questions. So one, have you seen, since we're talking about homeschool and we are an economic preppers show, and instilling different values and beliefs in our children that not only align with our own views, but also that are practical in the world around us. Have you seen the movie Captain Fantastic with Viggo Mortensen?
No.
Okay. Have any of you guys seen it? So the premise is like, this guy and his wife like wanted to take their kids out of an environment that they saw as like not fitting, right? Is like mainstream. And we all talk about how the mainstream is just not exactly the best type of information. It's like a junk food diet, but it's an information diet. And so like when you start homeschooling, and I had a background in homeschooling when I was a kid. So I did some as well. And so like you learn different things, and you can get on different tracks and different, learn different skill sets, which is pretty cool. But the movie, they basically go out to the woods, and his kids are like, you know, basically like just capable in all areas of life, and just so much more advanced than their cousins who were raised in the normal school system, which has its own like pros and cons. Definitely interesting movie. But one of the things that I like to talk about, and I'm curious about to hear your thoughts on, are the tools and resources that are becoming available. So things like AI, and how that is impacting or you see that impacting not only your how you teach your kids, but also how you see the tool interacting with the greater world around you?
Yeah, that's a great question. And so let me give you some background on my views on AI, because that'll explain kind of the reasoning behind the way I think about it in the future. When when humans discovered fire, we didn't have to forage as much, because, as we know today, you can get a lot more nutrients out of a cooked vegetable than you can out of a raw vegetable. And so instead of having to eat 24/7, you can cook your food, and you only have to eat, for, a couple hours a day. That frees up your time to be able to go do something like maybe you can hunt for big game now. And now that's even more nutrient density. And you have bones for tools now and hide for clothes. Maybe now you can spend some time building a shelter. Once you've built a shelter, then you have, you have some land near you instead of traveling all the time. And you realize, hey, I can bring the plants to me instead of going out and looking for plants. And you get farming. And I can bring the animals to me instead of going out and hunting the animals. And you have farming of animals. And then you realize, instead of working the fields myself, I can, strap some equipment onto these animals and have the animals work the fields for me. And then suddenly you multiply, every single step along the way. Technology amplifies human behavior.
Yep.
And that's all technology has ever done, is it amplifies human output so that we can, we outsource our labor so we can focus on more productive things. The steam engine, same thing. Now we have tractors that do the work of 100 people. Fossil fuels from coal, same thing. Nuclear energy, massively more energy density. Like every single step along the way, the internet is, every single technological advancement has allowed humans to outsource some of their labor. Like all the people who used to have jobs, they were called computers. If you ever saw the movie Hidden Figures about NASA with the all the ladies who were computers, they did the by hand, the calculations. They learned programming, and instead of losing their jobs, they became 1,000 or 1,000,000 times more productive. Not only that, but it created an entire industry of programmers that has only grown since then in history, up until about, maybe 8 months ago is maybe the first time. And then also maybe during the dot-com bubble burst. But overall, that industry has boomed, and it's created more areas of wealth as we've been able to offload labor to electronic machines. And AI is no different in terms of quality. It's a technology that outsources human labor. Now, in terms of scale, is it going to be bigger than the internet? I don't know. I think it's got a good shot at having a larger impact on human productivity than even the internet did. But at the end of the day, that's all it is. And so when we look at the things that humans right now, like white collar jobs, things that are like that take some of the high income jobs, a lot of these things are require high intelligence in one narrow area, being able to analyze data and come up with a conclusion that works. So you think about a doctor. Many times a day, he has to receive a bunch of data, let's say symptoms, think about, what are the potential causes of this, and then deliver a conclusion and have some sort of an action. What does AI do best? It's machine learning. All it does is it analyzes data and it spits out conclusions that are way better than what humans can do. It's still narrow. There's not going to be one AI that can paint a picture and replace a doctor and drive a car and operate a robot that can walk around and throw a football and raise a kid and teach a kid how to talk. I mean, at that point, basically you just have another human. And so that's a horizontal intelligence, broad intelligence. But AI is, very, very good, way better at vertical intelligence in one specific area. It's going to be better than humans at that. And so it's largely going to replace these white collar jobs that have been very good jobs for a long time. It's going to replace doctors. It's going to replace lawyers. It's going to replace, truck drivers, things like that. And so that's the background. And it basically just means that if you want to be successful in life, just like all throughout human history, you should never pigeonhole yourself to only being able to provide value in a way that a machine can do better than you.
Mm-hmm.
That's it. And like it's all through all of human history, that's been true. Now, those areas are constantly changing, but within the next 100 years, we're not going to have an AI that can replumb your toilet. You're not going to have an AI that's going to come in. I mean, it's, okay, maybe 100 years. I won't go that far, but definitely not
maybe
20 years. That's people always tend to overestimate technology in the short run and underestimate it in the long run. So I won't say 100 years, but at least for the next 10 to 20 years, it's largely going to be confined to anything that people do on a computer. And for the most part, people are going to be able to use it to maximize their output. And then you're going to have one lawyer that's going to be able to do the job of 100 lawyers. So 99 are going to lose their job and one is going to be really, really, really good at it. And so when thinking about like how to prepare my children for that future, that's why I don't believe in like getting a job or going to school to get good grades to be able to get a job. Because if somebody can train a person to do a monotonous, repetitive task, you're going to be able to train an AI to do it better. And so it's not about getting a job. It's about learning how to learn and learning how to create value. And that broad foundation you're going to be able to apply that in many different areas, and you won't get stuck only knowing how to do one thing that a computer can do better.
Yeah, that was fantastic. Yeah, I was going to ask you how you take your experience, teaching your kids, and like, because you have to have a lot of foresight and look to the future, right? When you're doing that, and think, is what I'm teaching them today going to be valuable in the future? I mean, the most successful teachers, right? The knowledge and information they instill and give to their students is applicable for many years to come. Versus, like you said, teaching someone a monotonous task that is going to be, they're going to get outcompeted by a robot in 2 or 3 years. So it's definitely, I think you shared a really unique perspective there and a good one there on that.
Yeah, so I think the focus is on those timeless skills that regardless of what specific jobs get replaced by AI or computers or software or machines, that you have the ability to pivot through that, like hiring, or the aspect of like delegation. Like if I want to create something that other people want badly enough to be able to pay me for it, how do I outsource that? How do I delegate that? How do I work in a more globalized world? How do I connect with people across the world that have skills that I can bring together and package a product or a service for other people? How do I sell something? How do I communicate something in a way that other people will want to listen? How do I build an audience? How do I get attention? Because it's not the best product that wins, it's the best known product. If I want if I want to do something like paint, or if I do want to be a doctor, or if I do want to be a plumber, how do I do that through the lens of running a business instead of going and getting a job?
Yeah, I really appreciate all of these types of discussions. I know Jeff has got another question, so I guess before we wrap up, I do want to mention to everyone watching, if you're enjoying this type of discussion, please like, share, subscribe, and definitely do the same for Joe Brown. I'm telling you guys, if you haven't seen us yet, Joe is one of the guys I respect the most. I really highly regard him, and I look forward to his content, honestly, all the time. So definitely come to Silver Symposium too. We're all going to be there. This whole group of people will be there, as well as Economic Ninja and a lot of other people that are going to be coming, like Chris, Financial Prepper, and the Shielded Prepper, Jesse. Greg Manarino is going to be there. So you guys are definitely going to want to come to the Silver Symposium, because all the favorite people, I have to say, Joe, you don't know this, but like I came with a checklist and I was like, man, guys, one day, like if our YouTube channel, like if we can get like, Joe Brown on and like Nobody's Special and like all these guys, like we're gonna be successful. Like all I know is that's my dream. And now like I've kind of hit all my goals. I don't really have a lot left. I feel like I'm a pretty happy guy. Like I have a great family, a beautiful wife, amazing kids. I got good friends like you guys. I'm a pretty happy camper here. So anyways, yeah, reminder for all of you guys, like, share, subscribe, definitely follow Joe. And I'll leave it to Jeff for a wrap-up question.
Yeah, I had one more question, but before I get to it, Joe, I'm just curious. How do you stay up on news? What is it your routine like? What is it that who do you follow? Who do you read? How do you stay? Because I know we all have our own routines. We watch you, we watch Economic Ninja, we watch a bunch of guys to stay up on it. Plus we read stuff on our own. But what is your routine?
I wouldn't necessarily call it a routine. I should probably make it into one. But I'm on Twitter a lot.
Yeah.
And you can see everybody I follow on Twitter. So I'm constantly, it seems to me like whenever something important is happening, it's on Twitter. I see it on Twitter first. People
Jeff.
start talking about it, and it's like, okay, so this is a little bit of a side note about social media. Social media is technology. Like I said, technology amplifies human behavior. And so money is a technology. It amplifies human behavior. So if you're an asshole and you get rich, you're going to be a rich asshole. If you're a good guy and you get rich, you're going to be, rich, but you're going to be a good guy. Like it just amplifies things. So if you're the type of person that is consistently finds yourself at sports bars screaming at the TVs about your team or a coach, not doing something that you wanted, well then I would be willing to bet that your Twitter feed is full of people screaming about sports. It amplifies human behavior. And so the thing about all of these media platforms is their only goal is to keep you on the platform. So they're going to feed you what you tell it you want. And so whatever your feed is full of, you have communicated through watching that stuff that's the stuff that you like, which means that you can customize it however you want. And so my Twitter feed is 100% like money, whether it's small business owners, large business owners, marketing, sales, investing, economics, whatever it is, all of those topics. But that's all it is. So anytime I'm on Twitter, that's what I'm consuming. And same with the other social media platforms that I'm on.
Yeah, my Twitter feed's full of fake Economic Ninja, fake Heresy Financial drone, fake. You know how many times I've been contacted by you before? Like, it's ridiculous.
Yeah. No, I get people I haven't talked to in 10 years texting me saying, "Hey, was that you?" I'm like, "No, That's not me. Hope you didn't send them any money."
Yeah.
So, but yeah, so I'm on Twitter a lot. That's where I tend to see things happening first when they're big. And then I'm also, in the morning, I'm looking on CNBC and Reuters and Bloomberg, and YouTube tends to have stuff latest because you have to make a video and edit it and upload it and all that. But when something's really big and it lasts a long time, then stuff will start going up there. And so you can gather people's more distilled, educated, thought through opinions and thoughts through YouTube. And so that's kind of my sources. I'm a lot on news platforms and Twitter.
Well, that's good to know, because we always want, people ask us, like, where do you get this stuff? Where do you follow it? Because we use lots of different sources. But Patrick gives me a hard time about Twitter because I've been booted a few times. And I
told him I agree. I'm like, dude, you just need to get on Twitter. If you follow like 3 or 4 really solid people, all of a sudden they're all talking about it at the same time. You figure out where they're getting their information from. You follow that person. Next thing, you're just always one step closer as you keep doing it.
It's just a challenge when you lose accounts time and time again. But
don't tweet anything then. Just don't say anything.
My personal Twitter, which I've adopted now pretty much as my primary, I still have a lot, but it also goes back to when I was a sports writer. So I understand what Joe's talking about. Where I've got a lot of sports fans that are there now, they're learning about Bitcoin, which is fine. I'm perfectly fine branching out. But Joe, you made a great point about something earlier. You said money is a technology. So my final question, this is really to everybody. I'm going to start with Joe. And it's sort of a challenging question, kind of like the last question you did when you talked to Patrick for Stock Pulse. Imagine tomorrow that the United States government makes an announcement and just say they're going to ban Bitcoin for whatever reason, but they're offering amnesty, and they're going to give you, anybody who owns Bitcoin right now, they'll pay you at a rate of $100,000 per Bitcoin. Would you accept that deal?
Well, okay. So in that situation, so I'm, thinking through like what would cause that situation to happen. You probably have to say no to that because in a somewhat likely scenario that the U.S. government does try and outlaw Bitcoin, it will not come alongside an offer. Like, it wouldn't be like a gun buyback program where they say, hey, like, we'll buy your guns from you. It would because it's a much more liquid market. Now it did happen for gold, but that was more because the United States government wanted that gold, and so anybody who and the dollar was already backed by gold at that time, and so in a situation where they just outright banned it, there would probably be some negative price pressure as people would have to sell it, or they would just become outlaws. In the situation where they said we will buy it back from you at any price, even not even assuming a large premium, you'd probably have to say no, because you wonder, well, why are they buying it back, and what are they going to be doing with it? And if that were the case, then it would probably be a certainty that the CIA created Bitcoin, and so they're trying to refill Satoshi Nakamoto's wallet or something like that. I don't know, but you'd probably have to say no, because similar to the ban on gold when they bought back gold, that would have been something you'd want to keep at the time.
Well, you're definitely hitting on the topic. You hit on all the points I wanted to bring up, but before I round it out, which I think you did a great job with already, I just wanted to pose the same question to our co-host Dylan. Dylan, what's your thought here?
Oh man, I think you have to say no, like what Joe said, because why would they want to buy it back? I think that's kind of implicitly admitting they can't stop it, they can't shut it down on their own, and so it has some level of value or strategic threat to the United States, if it's the United States, like their position. So if they do that, I think immediately you have other countries that would be more than happy to embrace anyone that has Bitcoin, because it just kind of has that game theory effect where, hey, the United States doesn't want it, and any country that's not really on the best of terms with the United States would probably be like, hey, come here, right? Come here with your Bitcoin, creating the opportunity there. And then I think if they were trying to acquire more Bitcoin, so in the case they want to, they're doing it because they want to have more Bitcoin than everyone else, so they can use that power, or they can use their position to start tying things to Bitcoin and have just a larger stack. They'd probably just create just really, really, really seemingly high quality incentives for individuals to spend their Bitcoin, and then they would skim off all the taxes from those transactions, or they would be selling different assets to people that hold Bitcoin for like insane deals, so that they're acquiring more Bitcoin that way, just to kind of shake people out. So it'd be kind of like a trap. It's like, buy this thing that we control, and give up the thing that you control for it, which is exactly what they did with land. The landowners, it's like, hey, you can't, like, it's not easy to break off a piece of your land to go buy a cow if you need milk and you need beef. So you might as well sell a piece of your land for some money and we'll give you protection. So it's a similar thing. So I think it wouldn't happen. And I think if that situation happens and you're listening to this channel, you probably shouldn't sell your Bitcoin.
I would tend to agree, but I'll elaborate on my after I let Patrick have his go around on this interesting question.
I would
Patrick?
sell my Bitcoin. I would.
I want to know why. The viewers want to know why.
Okay, because here's the thing. I have dollar-denominated debt. That means every month I can't keep some of my Bitcoin because I've got to sell some of my Bitcoin to pay off my loans. So, yeah, I'm going to pay off my loans and I'm going to keep stacking more Bitcoin every month. That $100,000 will clear my debt and allow me to add another, I don't know, like 75 miners. So, yeah, I'm in. I'm going to produce more Bitcoin and then I'll find you guys and sell you a premium for all the Bitcoin for the next halving for the next year. So yes, I'm all in.
Yeah, I think that like for Patrick, as a former miner that Patrick is, and knowing what he does and how quickly he can turn and take the
I can turn dollars to
arbitrage here.
Bitcoin because these miners, they need dollars to pay their debts.
Correct.
So they got to pay electricity. So I'll just call up a miner tonight and be like, listen, you don't need to pay 3% more. I'll save you 3%. Let me buy some Bitcoin. So yeah. And they'll be like, well, Bitcoin's 30,000. Like, no, the government's giving 100. What do you mean the government's giving 100? You're really going to send me $100,000 for 2 Bitcoin, like half the value? It's double. No, don't worry. I'm good. I'll take my 2 Bitcoin, even though I sold 1. Because they need the cash now to pay a debt.
Well, Joe, and I think Dylan even mentioned it, like the historical perspective here. This happened before. It was just replaced Bitcoin with gold. Now, the situation was a little bit different, yes, but they did revalue gold twice. I think it was in the space of about 6 to 9 months in 1933. Gold was worth $14 an ounce. They paid people $21 for it and took it, then revalue it to $35 to make their numbers look good. And the Weimar Republic issue was happening at the same time, and we were in the middle of 2 world war. We were between World War I and World War II. There were lots of reasons that they needed to do this.
Dude, in that world, though, gold and silver go up in value too. You could like literally take your dollars, buy some silver, ship the silver to your bro that's like, hey, I need some silver. I'll send you Bitcoin. And now you've just turned the government's dollars into more Bitcoin. As long as you can find a path back to more Bitcoin, the answer to me is always, yes, I'll sell.
That's the key, and knowing how to arbitrage quickly before they implement whatever change. Because whoever makes an offer like this, if the offer sounds too good, first off, it is. And second, there's a reason why they're making this offer, because they're going to value whatever they're buying at a higher value than what they're paying for. That's just human nature. That's just how it's going to work. So I just wanted to wrap that up because we talk about all these different things. We talk about Bitcoin and gold and silver, and it's happened historically before. We talked history a little bit. So I thought it was a good question to wrap things up. But Joe, we really, really appreciate your time and joining us. It's been a very entertaining and very lively conversation. Really appreciate that. If you guys want to go out there, all these links will be in the description. Here's Joe again. He's at Heresy Financial on YouTube. You also find it on at Joe Brown here at Heresy Financial on Twitter. Joe, thank you once again for joining us here at Economic Preppers. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks again for having me.
Thank you.
All right. So with all that said, I'm going to say be prepared and not scared, and we will see you next time. Take care.